Welcome back to Weekend Warrior Minis. Today, I've got a real old school treat for you folks. Recently, I've noticed that there's been some sort of kind of like retro Warhammer revival, and maybe I'm a little bit late to the scene, and you've kind of all known about this for a while, but personally, I've been seeing so much old Hammer content out there, and I'm here for it. Maybe it's the hype for the old world coming out, or perhaps maybe it's some eldritch being in the basement of Warhammer driving people to dust off their old middies. I have no idea, but the eldritch horror theory is a lot cooler. But today I wanted to pay homage to our hobby ancestors and walk a very long mile in their Doc Martens. A while ago I came across this guide from GW on how to paint a second edition orc in their classic style, and while I was reading it I realized that painting it today would be a completely different ballgame. We have lots of bells and whistles that just weren't around back then, so I decided to challenge myself and see if I can completely recreate this guide with only stuff available to painters back in the day. Side note about equipment. Unfortunately, due to me being a normal person, I can't really afford to buy all the original pots used in the guide. So I went with the next best thing, which is color matching with the currently available colors that I can buy from my stores. Listen, man, I tried, but apparently rent is not optional and eviction is scary. Jokes aside, let's actually get to work. And the first place I started was with the base coating all of the black stuff. The guide does say that I could start from a black prime, but the most important part of classic paint jobs is the vibrant colors, which means we're probably going to need to prime white. And that brings us to the first pitfall of this paint style, which is brush control. Now, don't get me wrong, brush control is an important mechanic for any painting, but with many styles, fixing or hiding mistakes is pretty easy. With this style, though, you need to be absolutely surgically clean. Our sample guy is clean, and I mean Joe Dart levels of clean with it. If you do fuck up, which you probably will fuck up,
Lord knows I did.
you're going to have to fix it, which can be a massive pain in the ass if you get black in an area that needs to be white. Nevertheless, be prepared for lots of cleanup, and it's going to be fine. After the black is done, I moved on to the reds for the piece. For this, I used Bold Pyro Red from Proacro, which is just an amazing paint, and everyone should have a pot of it. No, I'm not sponsored, but I'd like to be. Proacro, if you're listening. Cool little side note about red from this era of painting. A lot of hobbyists will call the 90s the red period because a lot of official GW paint jobs from this time feature a lot of red, which is pretty apparent on this guy if you take a look at him. As far as why red was so popular back then, I think it had a lot to do with the limited paint range that was available. Not to go full boomer on you guys, but we have it pretty damn good today in regards to most paint. Most paint ranges have a ridiculous amount of colors in them. Well, I think the OG Citadel paint set literally only had like 10 in it or something. Anyways, with our reds out of the way, we're on to our metallics, and any basic lead belcher-esque paint will do. We don't need to be too picky. I use Duncan Road Surcoat Silver because I like it, and my lead belcher was way too far away. With our metallics all out of the way, I just want to point out a quick little fun thing. As far as I can tell from the guide, the gun barrel is not actually drilled out and is actually painted on like NASCAR headlights. I don't watch NASCAR, but I did watch Cars once, so I'm practically an expert. Next up, we're going to be putting the green on this green skin. I base coated all the skin in War Boss green, which as far as I understand it is a very close analog for ye old Goblin green. I paid extra special attention to keeping things clean for this part. Once I reached full opacity, I hit my first major roadblock though, which is shading. You see, if we take a look at our handy dandy guide, we can see that there's some kind of shading going on in the recesses. Unfortunately, the written guide doesn't actually specify what it is, but I do have a sneaking suspicion that it's Ork Flesh Wash, which no longer exists anymore. Well, unless that is you buy it from Coat to Arms, which I didn't do. So I decided that I would go with the closest match that I could possibly make, which is Ork Skin Express Color mixed with a little purple or black. I had to play around with this to get it to work, but I got something close in the end, and if you want to recreate this guide, you're going to have to do the same thing. Next up, I highlighted the skin according to the guide, except I didn't add white because I thought it might desaturate the green a little too much. Instead, I opted to mix in yellow and then some Ushabti bone at the end to get my highlights. Overall, I think this gave me a much better result, but if you hate it, let me know in the comments, or please don't, I'll cry. After the skin was looking spiffy, I decided that it was time to wash the metals. Just good old-fashioned Nuln Oil and then a quick highlight back up with Surcoat Silver while avoiding the recesses. The guide doesn't really say too much about the metallics except just to wash them, so I'm doing a little interpretation here. Oh, you thought I was going to move on to the next step of the video, didn't you? Fool! This is the part of the video where I ask you to remember to like and subscribe my video if you are enjoying it so far. It really helps the channel out, and it's entirely free. Also, I stream on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern to midnight, so you can check me out there too. Anyways, enough self-promo. Next up, we got the reds. And the reds are super simple for this. Basically, I'm just going for a gentle highlight of orange and slowly moving into yellow. On the pants, I'm going to make sure that I'm hitting the corners of the creases with almost pure yellow. And on the horns, I really want to get that iconic red to orangey yellow gradient. Just work slowly and build up color patiently. The vast majority of this mini is red though, so you want it to look as good as possible. Take your time here. As you can probably tell by now, I'm really procrastinating one particular part of this mini, which is the checkers. So I'm going to move on to the bones. For these, I'm just doing a really simple basic bone color like Ushabti bone, and then a quick brown wash, and then some layers back on top for the highlights. If you want to as well, you can mix in some white to get extra sharp highlights as well. Now for the part that I've been dreading the absolute most, the fucking checkers. And let me tell you what, folks, this part was not easy, but I did actually have a good time doing it. Mostly because I did it on stream and I had chat to keep me company, which is nice. But yeah, I mean, there's really no trick here. Black and white paint and a very fine brush is about it. Take your time and make sure you sketch things out before you commit to super opaque black paint. Also, if you're going to try this, you're just going to make mistakes. That's just the truth of it. Well, that is unless you're some type of painting freak, in which case, good for you, but I'm normal. The main thing is don't get discouraged. All of these steps have an ugly phase, and if you push through it, it's going to look great. So just keep with it. And voila, after a decent amount of cleaning up around the mini, we actually have ourselves a pretty damn respectable mini here. And I think I did a pretty decent job following the guide where I possibly could. That being said, I'm going to shut up and I'm going to roll the B-roll. Anyways, guys, thank you for making it to the end of the video. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed today's video. And as always, remember, the only bad mini is an unpainted one.